Hey, Lioness. Welcome to the show, Lioness Conversations, where we help women be brave, to lead with confidence and joy, and to find your path to the most meaningful work of your life. I'm your host, Jen Porter, leadership and empowerment coach for ambitious and heart centered women who are ready to change the world. Joining us today is Stephanie Granato, a powerhouse who has spent 2 decades guiding founders in tech and media, and now connects sophisticated investors with innovative alternative assets through Electa Capital. She is passionate about connecting women to opportunities in the alternative investment space. Stephanie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jen. I am so thrilled to be here having this conversation with you.
Me too. I mean, when we connected, it just felt like this instant synergy. And I was so excited about what you were doing because you were getting ready to do your TEDx talk.
Thank you. Yes, it was a really interesting process getting ready for that. I am not a public speaker. I've been an entrepreneur, as you mentioned, for 20 years with a law firm and now through Electa, which recently rebranded to Capital Axon. But
Okay.
um, yeah, doing the TED was a whole new level of just preparing something. What could I say that would, resonate, that might people might want to hear, and that would feel authentic. So it was quite an experience.
Well, when we first spoke, you and I connected instantly on the, empowering women and investing in women. And that's the heart of your TEDx talk is why we need more women investors.
Absolutely. And that is what motivated me to power through my stress and fear of not being able to do the talk, and then get to a presentation that was more conversational, which is what they wanted. But for
Okay.
me, having been an investor now, early stage for about 10 years, first through clients in a law firm I own, and then branching out, there aren't a lot of women investing in early stage relative to men. And so much wealth is created in that early stage of investing. And I thought, boy, we need to get on that ride and
I want to
benefit.
I want to spend some time on the TEDx talk because I think it's such an example of being brave and overcoming that fear. I mean, just the, panic, fear, uncertainty, and self doubt, and all the gremlins that can come up. And I would imagine it's like a micro example of what holds women back all the time, and at that macro level too. So
100%. Sorry.
so let's start with what made you what was your first thought that you might do a talk?
I mean, my first thought was, no, I don't have the bandwidth to do this. I've been focusing a lot of my energy on Capital Axon and the alternative space, but trying to get my law firm to a point where it needs less of me. And so bandwidth was one. And then it was just like total fear. I'm like, can't do that.
So the thought in your mind was the excuse was I don't have time, right? Because the truth is we make time for what we want to make time for,
We do.
right?
And I
And
did.
we're all full, like life is full, no doubt. It's not like any of us are twiddling our thumbs, but we carve out space for what we're passionate about and what we really want to do. So time ends up being a bit of an excuse, right? But the thought in your head was, I can't do this. Is that true?
Really true, Jen. I was just petrified. And I thought, well, what can I possibly say that people would want to listen to take the time. Um, it was really crazy. And actually, I have to give a shout out to my husband because he said, "Are you crazy? You can do this."
And
Apply.
isn't that what we need? I find that, and I don't love this. I just find that this is the truth, is that women need an invitation. We
I
need to be
agree.
invited into experiences, and we need to be encouraged by others that know us well and can see us in ways that we don't see ourselves yet.
100%. So the cohort at TEDx that I did at TEDx San Diego is a group of women lawyers, 8 of us, and it was the first ever legal salon. And one of the instigators was a colleague friend of mine, Rose Bolas, who has a law firm in San Diego. And she said, "Oh, I'm doing this. Do you have any, you should really apply." I said, no, I don't have time. And then I said, "But I'll help you, if you need help." Right.
And what switched? When did it flip?
She's like, "Oh, you really should apply. It's not that hard." And then I said, "Nah." And then I told my husband, he's like, you got to apply. Are you crazy?
You have so much experience, so much knowledge, so much life that you've lived and things you've seen. Of course, you have so much to offer, and others saw that. I'm glad your husband encouraged you to do it. So, when did you kind of commit to it within yourself?
Well, the process is that you apply and create, responses to questions that they answer, and then you do an initial interview with the curator of TEDx San Diego, who's Audrey Jacobs. And so we had our talk and our conversation, and she said, "You don't have to just talk about the law. You can talk about anything you want." And that is kind of really when a light bulb went on, because I said, "You know what? There's something that I would like to say about
And what,
women, particularly in the investment space and risk taking."
yes, that was definitely a theme throughout this was risk
Mhm.
taking. So, what was the main point of your TEDx talk?
Well, the main point was, I mean, for me, it was risk taking, because you really need to take a risk in life, or many risks. We're all taking them unconsciously all the time. So take them intentionally with the thought of, "Hey, this is going to do something positive for me." Um, and then the sort of other theme of that was, I've been around the venture space. There are a lot of statistics. Women get historically 2% of venture funding. Venture firms are run by men, et cetera, et cetera. But, we can change all that. If women have more agency than we think. If we act collectively, and we all work together in this ecosystem, that 2% will go away. When we fund women founders, we don't need the permission of male VCs. We're our own permission. So that was a
Yeah.
really important point for me to make.
And I want to get into that theme a little bit more, but first, what was it like to deliver your talk?
The delivery actually was okay. I had tremendous anxiety leading up to. I went down to San Diego the day before so I could stay over, and we had to be there early. They did hair and makeup, and um but I had practiced so much, Jen. I mean, I'm an over preparer, so I had memorized, and I was practicing, and weirdly, as a lawyer, I kind of treated the night before like a bar exam. Like I'm like, I'm not going to sit and practice all night. I'm going to read it once, and that's it. I'm like, I've done the work, and it
Yeah.
has to just fall. So
I always say that confidence comes from preparation and practice.
you're so right. It really does. It anchors you. It grounds you.
Hmm.
Gives you something to fall back on. And Um, I did my talk after lunch. I had originally, I think I was on the roster to go really early, and I'm like, "Oh, that's great. I can get it over with. I can watch the other women and
Yeah.
it'll be so nice." And then because I was local, there were some people coming in from much greater distances across the country. They needed to get flights. And so I ended up going right after lunch, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, how am I going to do this?" But I had watched a couple of the other women give the talks, and it was a little more forgiving than I thought. I was like, "You know what? Whatever happens, it's really going to be okay."
Hmm.
And then I'm not used to the lighting or any of that in a studio. So
Yeah.
when you get on stage, the lights are so bright. You can't see a lot beyond. It's like a big bubble of light. And so it was a little
Different than
less.
normal life.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to get back
Exactly.
to confidence because risk taking and confidence. Like anytime we're taking a risk, particularly one that when we feel it, it feels like a big risk to us. The nerves and the anxiety show up. Confidence does come from the preparation and the practice, and so it can ground us, but it doesn't eliminate the feelings.
Definitely not. I mean, I was doing deep breathing. Like before I walked, you have to walk out and then turn to the audience. And I just was like, okay,
Yeah,
I was
calming
doing
the
just
body.
deep breathing to just calm down. But yes, that little feeling, I feel it here. I feel it in my gut.
Yeah.
I do. When you said the word feel, I'm like, yes, that perfectly captures it because I felt it. I feel it. And I think so many of us do. We feel it, you know?
And when we as women, I can't speak for men because I'm not one, but when we're feeling it, I think the self-doubt starts to creep in because I think in some way we think we shouldn't feel that way. If we were really courageous, if we were really brave, then we wouldn't be feeling this way. But actually, it just comes with the territory.
I think it comes for me, it definitely comes with the territory. I remember listening to this series of tapes ages ago, and I can't remember the author now. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Mhm.
Um, which is something you have to learn to do. It's like a muscle. You have to learn,
Yeah,
for me, to exercise. It's like, okay, take one more step towards your edge, How far can you go?
yeah.
Um,
And I think when we do that, when we do brave things over and over, we have a track record that we can look back on and stand firmer on. Like, oh, right. No, this feeling is familiar. I have definitely felt this before. It comes like I can expect to feel this way. My heart is racing, my palms are sweaty, my mouth is dry, all the anxiety producing, body responses, and to be able to persevere through that. And I love I mean, it's such a simple technique, but breathing is so powerful. It can calm our nervous system enough for us to be able to open our mouth and at least, just start speaking.
exactly. You literally can't speak without air in your lungs. So you have to have it in there.
Yeah. I'm so glad you did it. And I'm going to encourage everybody to check it out. It's a fantastic talk. And I'll include the link and everything so people can find it really easily.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah. It's an important message.
Well, I really hope women think about how can we shape the future? Even with small actions, we can have a dramatic impact on the
Yeah.
future if we act and if we act
Exactly.
at scale, you know?
When you and I connected, it's been a couple, 2 or 3 months since we actually first talked, but it was like you and I intersected at this very specific point where I was getting really interested in women investing in women. And I've actually talked with friends since then about this concept. And it's amazing how many other women are thinking about this, and we're thinking about it in not in huge ways, right? Like I have all of this money and I just get to choose who I'm going to invest in. It's actually the daily investments that we make in others. Like I invest, every day through my work, but also like it doesn't have to be a large amount of money to make
That's
an
right.
investment. We can make small investments that make a huge difference.
A huge difference. And again, if we do it at scale, if we're all doing that, our values and our vision will be expressed through that. But yes, I mean, it's risk taking. You don't have to go all in on everything. Start to build up gradually. And that is one of the things I talked about in the TED Talk. There are more channels now than there were 10, 20 years ago for women to make small investments in the private market. And certainly, if you're not investing in the public markets, there are platforms where you could literally do $1 a week just to start getting in the mindset of, okay, what's
Absolutely.
important to me? And how do I
Yes.
express that, and
I'm going
create,
to
yeah.
I'm going to use an analogy. So years ago, I was in a transition in my life where I'd gone through a divorce and I, didn't have double income and that sort of thing. And so I felt like things were tighter than I wanted them to be. And I stopped investing in my 401k. And it's hard once you stop, it's hard to get back into that. It's hard to sort of give up that portion of money. And a friend of mine said, just start small. Just start small, because then once you do, you can't say you're not investing in your 401k. You can't
Exactly.
say that any longer, because even if it's just a small, tiny amount, but having like it's an amount you won't really miss. And so then building from there, it's like proving to yourself you can do it by starting at a really reasonable place and then building from there.
Right. I always say to myself, it's like proving that the sky won't fall in on you if you take
Mhm.
this one little action,
So
you
true.
know.
How did you get interested in this topic?
It's something I talk about in the talk. So in my law firm, I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, watching them, helping them launch and scale. And I saw them creating massive wealth. And then I started reading about it and, learning that so much wealth is created in the private market before companies go public. I mean, there are only, I think, about 30,000 public companies in the US, but there's so many more private companies. Also, small private companies are the backbone of the US economy. So, thinking about it in different ways opened my mind up. And I just, one day I decided, okay, I would start, just start. Um,
And how did you do that? How did you start? Like, where did you start?
So I had a lot of clients who would offer me equity in their companies in exchange for some startup legals. So as a small firm, my firm had, I think, pretty reasonable pricing. I started in big law where the hourly rates can run up to close to $2,000 in some of the biggest. And so but when you're an entrepreneur and you don't have cash is really constrained at the beginning. They would ask for these things. And at some point, I thought, well, I'm going to just take a risk on that. So I did
You
one of
did.
those deals. I just said, okay, I'll give you XYZ and startup legal for a certain percentage of your startup company. And that was the beginning of me thinking about it. And then I
Yeah.
started to do it a little more. And then I branched out to starting to write small checks. And that was it. That was the beginning.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you get guidance from other people when you were negotiating that first deal for
Yeah.
of services for equity? Did you have some doubt about how to even structure something like that?
But I have been doing deals for a very long time. So I had seen other people do it.
Okay.
And I knew a lot of male attorneys who were doing it and had done it successfully. A couple of them had had huge hits. And then it was like, well, they didn't necessarily need to practice law anymore. But this whole business model of practicing and investing was really working well. So I had some at least role models to look at and to talk to about how to do it. Yes,
Which is so important. I mean, stepping into something new, it's helpful to have seen it modeled. And if not, we've got to connect with people who can guide us.
always. I'm always learning from other people, every single person I meet, but definitely intentionally looking to learn more in the spaces I'm interested in.
You've talked about how we can make a difference, that we can actually change the landscape, change the future, um, change what wealth looks like. What is your vision? What do you see in the future if we do come together collectively and make these small changes together?
You know, I see so many wonderful things happening. And I'll give you an example. A couple weeks ago, I was down in Orange County judging the Survivor competition, which is an entrepreneurs competition. They get up on stage and they pitch. It's 3 rounds, and 40 go through the first round, and they get winnowed down to 10. And then I was one of the judges in that second round, and we winnow it down to 3. And then there's a final panel that winnows it down to one winner. And it was so interesting. There were, what bubbled to the top were two women who had medical devices that definitely there's a huge market for. And, because we had a diverse panel, I think it really helped them bubble up to the top. But they were things that are dramatically and urgently needed, I would say, by women in reproductive health. And I was just thrilled to see that. So one of these women had invented a device for something that hadn't changed in 150 years. So taking something that was painful and making it less painful for women, and literally the existing technology, or technology in air quotes, was something developed in the Civil War. So
Wow.
I
What
think
was it?
it was a device to help insert IUDs. And I guess the current device has these two pointy tips. And this one uses something much gentler. It uses suction. And so, it's supposed to be a very painful procedure. And the other one was a LiDAR device for monitoring women in labor so that you didn't have to touch and you could have a much more sort of sanitary, hygienic environment.
Wow.
I mean, to me, that just, says, hey, we can do a lot. If we
It just
think
goes
about
to
it.
show, I mean, the ideation that can come out of, entrepreneurs is just fantastic.
It's
There's never
fantastic.
been more women. There's never been more entrepreneurs, period. I don't think. I
I
think
don't think
about, like,
so either.
there probably were entrepreneurs decades ago and then kind of got phased out by big companies and then, like small mom and pop, so many
Mhm.
things. And now there's so many entrepreneurs who are doing their thing.
I think there's more pathways to entrepreneurship. I think
Mhm.
maybe, especially post COVID, people wanted to have maybe a little bit more control, or they lost their jobs and they just, necessity is the mother of invention. So
Right.
moving forward, but I do see a lot more women innovating, and that makes me really happy because there are things that, we need as women and that the world needs, and that are not necessarily being invented. you know
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And how do you make decisions now about who and what you invest in?
That is a great question. So I don't only invest in women. I invest for return, which is, I think, if you're going to donate money, find a nonprofit you love and donate it. I think if you're going to invest, really think about investing for return. It doesn't have to be 100x your investment or even 10x, but it's something that will ultimately have a financial benefit. So I think about that. I think about sectors I'm interested in. Women's health is something I'm interested in, climate change, but I love technology. I love all of it. I invested pretty recently in an ed tech company that was a male founder I had been working with. And I just thought, this is a great founder, has already had 4 exits. And I'm like, I love what they're doing. And, I saw the potential. So that is what, it's just things I see potential in and that I
Mm.
like.
And are you doing this on your own or do you do this through a group?
Well, so I do it a couple different ways. So some I do on my own, these direct, very small angel investments. And then I invest in funds because that is a much less risky way to start. So,
Okay.
for example, there's some incredible women-led, women-founded funds that focus on women and diverse teams of founders. And so I've had the fortune to be able to invest in a couple of those. But there are many ways to do it. There are investment groups. I mean, one way to start is just to connect with a group that's doing it and learn from their process. Connect with an angel
Yeah.
group and do that. There are organizations that create syndicates, so they pool the money and you can invest a small amount, but it's pooled with others, so it can be a larger investment in the
Mhm.
whole and have more impact. So,
Mhm. And if there are people that want to just get started or even just learn more about what's out there, where would they start?
I mean, literally just Google what's in your area, find an angel group in your area and connect with that and just start reading about it. before
Yeah.
you actually write a check or exchange your time for money, for investment or whatever. Learn, educate yourself, find other people that that have done it. And if you don't know people, connect with other people online. There are a lot more resources. So
Yeah. And what kind of questions would you recommend asking for those that have no experience in this and they're trying to learn, but a lot, it's like a website is going to say all the great things and you think, oh, this is all amazing, but you don't even know to ask those underneath questions. What do you recommend for people?
really connect with an angel investor group, even an online one, because they won't be pushing you to make a particular investment. I think if something, an organization or a person is pushing you to say, hey, you should do XYZ, for me, that's never the right answer. The right answer is, okay, what are the questions, just like you said, Jen, and that we need to think about. And, first think about, okay, how comfortable do I feel with this? What do I know about it? What do I want to learn as a baseline? And then how do I get started? A
Mhm.
lot of investing mostly starts with due diligence. So that means asking questions about the investment. If it's an investment fund, it's like, okay, has the manager had a fund before? Or is it a first time fund? Has this team worked together before? What track record of success do they have? What area is the investment? Is it something I feel like I can understand? Like I wouldn't invest
Mhm.
in something that I can't understand because
Yeah.
so for example, women's health is something I understand.
Mhm.
But there are
Mhm.
a lot of technical opportunities, high tech opportunities. If you're not well versed in that, you could connect with someone else who is, if you find it intriguing. So get the benefit of the brain share of other people.
Yeah. Those are great questions. That's really helpful. So what I'm hearing is like do the due diligence, ask the questions, do the research and find out more, and know yourself really well. What are you passionate about? You want to step into something that you're curious about, that you can understand, because that's going to bring more joy when you're in the process of seeing how it develops over time, right?
Absolutely. I'll give you another example. I recently did a small investment in a company that makes everything that's compostable. So it's dishes, it's cups, it's silverware, it's trash bags. And I just love what they're doing. And I invested through a syndicate. So it was a small investment, but it was fantastic. An amazing women founder who's bootstrapped it and then raised money and got this product in, big chain stores. And I just love it, and I love the idea that these are things that, we can all use and that they're not bad for the environment because you can get them composted and they go back instead of going into a landfill.
Yeah.
They can
Yeah.
go back into the, you know, ecosystem and be
Reusable.
reusable. Hmm.
And how do you know the expected rate of return? I mean, it's all, of course, it's a gamble, it's a risk, but
Yeah.
what are you looking for as predictors of success when it comes to that rate of return?
Well, okay. So I think those are two really different questions. So when I look at due diligence, for me, I do earlier stage and I look at the team, I look at the market sector. Team is really important. Team cohesion is super important. If it's a solo founder, you have to look at and think about how are they going to build an advisory group around them and scale, because it's hard for one person to do everything. You can't. So at some point, you have to bring in people. And then, it just depends what stage it is. So early stage investors like to think they're looking for a 10x return, but statistically, only two of every 10 companies succeed. So there
Okay.
are a lot with the, increase in the use of AI. There are a lot of founders and groups trying to kind of crack the code and improve the success rate. Um, with AI and other tech tools. So I'm hearing a lot more about that.
Yeah.
I'm involved with a platform called We Global, and we've launched the We Score, which is takes in founder data and gives recommendations on how to improve the traction and the success. There are other groups out there that are just measuring to try to give you better information about where to put your money
Okay.
for return, but you can't guarantee it. It's definitely risky.
Right. Right. When we first spoke, one of the things that stood out to me is what changed for you when you became a mom, when you were starting a family. Will you
Yeah.
talk about that risk and kind of where you were at that stage of life and how you were thinking about your future?
Yeah, I mean, so much changed. I knew I wanted to spend time with my daughter, and the last law firm I was at, they claimed to have a part-time track, but there was only one other woman that had done it, and I would hear the whisperings. It was like, oh, if she has another baby, she's done. And I kind of kept my pregnancy under wraps for almost 8 months.
Mhm.
Nobody knew because I didn't know what that was going to look like.
Mm.
And I knew I wanted to spend time with my daughter. And so, while I was out on maternity leave, I was just like, I don't know how this is going to work. Uh,
Yeah, how are you thinking about so I'm imagining that's a tremendous amount of stress to be carrying, not just carrying the baby and trying to do everything you can to
yeah.
foster her life, but wondering and being fearful about what that meant for your career. That must have been really stressful.
I mean, it was, but I really just tried to put it aside. I really tried so hard, Jen, to stay in the moment and focus because I didn't want the stress to impact me or the baby physically.
Yeah.
That was critical. But after she was born, I was having conversations with my husband, and he said, "Oh, you should start your own firm." And I'm like, you know, yeah, right. I don't know how to do that.
Mhm.
I don't know how to get clients. I just literally had no idea. But I did tell a few friends that I was thinking about it because I couldn't see how these two worlds at that point, which was now 21 years ago, could mesh together. I just knowing
And
what
the
I
two
knew,
worlds meaning
the
being a
law
mom.
firm world and being able to be home in time. I wanted to be home for dinner. I wanted to feed her and give her a bath and, have some weekend time to go to the birthday parties and all the things that moms do, right? And all the other things we do that take up time, like, just making sure your child is healthy and educated and,
Yeah.
all
And
that.
what was life like at the law firm at that time? Because it sounds like you may have been working evenings and weekends.
Well, before I definitely didn't. And I was lucky. I had a really good pregnancy. And so I worked up until the Friday before I gave birth. And so but I felt good. I mean, I had no reason to sit at home. I wasn't, if I hadn't, probably could have taken some leave, but I was feeling good and I didn't want to sit. Um,
Yeah.
but it was nights, it was weekends. As a transactional lawyer, you're on call. So when a deal is happening, you're always on call. And then there was just also a culture of being in the seat all the time. And so they
Mhm.
just wanted you in the seat. The senior partners wanted you sitting in the seat doing their work, which is kind of the opposite of being an entrepreneur and bringing in clients and making them happy. Um, because
So
that's where the return is, and that's really what it came down to. The highest return in the law firms where I was going to the rainmakers.
mhm. And so when did you make the decision to do something different?
Well, and you should ask. So I told a few friends while I was on maternity leave, and then I went back after I had saved up all my vacations. So I had about 5 months, including the California paid family leave. And then I heard from a friend about a weekend, and she's like, there's this client. They're at a big New York law firm, and I had started in big law in New York, and it was a widow. And my friend said, she's not happy with the representation. He's not serving her interests. He's still serving essentially her deceased husband's interests. So she said, just step into this. And I said, well, okay. So that was it. I just said, all right, I can do that deal. I've done those deals before. It was a sale of a nice size middle market company. It had a lot of real estate. It was a manufacturing brick maker out in Castaic. And I stepped into the deal. We kept the partner at the New York firm kind of as the face, just not to scare the buyer. And I gave notice. So she told me about it. I said, all right, fine. And then I gave my firm 2 weeks notice. And that was that. I did a trade for some space in Century City where I was then practicing so that I could give a little bit of services and have an office without having to go out of pocket, because I really had no idea. And that was it. That was the start. And I said, I got there the first day into this office. It was the office of the person who had referred me the deal. And I said, what do I do? And they said, well, send a retainer agreement and ask for the retainer. And I'm like, I didn't even know how much to ask for, Jen.
Yeah.
I said, how much do I ask for? And that was
I mean,
that.
that's a real question every time we're doing something new. So did that
Right.
person have some guidance for you in that?
She said, ask for $5,000. And I was like, oh my God, really? That person's going to. And then that was that. You know what?
Yeah.
I sent the
Yeah.
letter, we got started, and, I built it from there. It had a lot of ups and downs. It took me a long time to really learn how to do, I guess, business development and how to get, a steady flow of clients. But I've been pretty successful in that and very, very fortunate. And then that whole journey kind of led me to, seeing entrepreneurs and what they were doing and to getting engaged with that.
So what's it been like raising your daughter who's now 21? But
Yeah,
what
I
was that
mean,
like for you making that big change?
amazing. It worked so well. Having the freedom and the flexibility was incredible for me. I mean, it massively exceeded my expectations that I could still have a professional career, make money, and have some flexibility to be a
Yeah.
mom, which has been, such a joy and still is a joy. And you're a mom too, right? Are you?
I'm not.
You're
No,
not. Okay.
not.
I didn't know.
No,
Okay. Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
But when I hear entrepreneurs talk about why they stepped into taking the risk of becoming an entrepreneur, it was about the freedom and, having ownership of one's schedule.
Schedule, freedom, the economics were so much better. I
Yeah.
couldn't believe it, I was just because at a law firm, even if you're a partner, they still take an enormous percentage off the top, which they need to cover, all of the expenses of an organization. But, as an entrepreneur, you have freedom and you can make, the ability to make decisions as well. It's like, okay, if a
Yeah.
client wasn't a fit for me for whatever reason, I could say, oh, no, thank you. There's probably someone that can serve you better than I can. And
Mm-hmm.
that freedom also has just been tremendous.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much autonomy. Being able to make decisions and pivot, decide to do something differently is just you.
It's just right. And it's a learning curve. There's a lot of learning involved. You just
Oh
sometimes
yeah.
you don't know what's working until it hasn't worked for longer than you would like, and you have to then adjust. But
Yeah.
it is great freedom. And my firm really evolved into representing founders, founder teams, launching and scaling. I do, it does a lot of other things, but that was sort of became the sweet spot, which is how it sparked my interest in angel investing.
The work that I'm focused on is helping women clarify their mission. What are they made for? What are they really designed to do in this world? And the missions that I'm most excited about are those that do good in the world, that make an impact. And there are a lot of women that hold their mission inside, and it feels impossible because a lot of time, it's like the corporate shackles, the golden handcuffs that keep us tied. A lot of these women that I work with are the breadwinners for their families. And so It feels impossible. It's sort of like a pipe dream, right? It's like, "Oh, wouldn't that be great if I could do that?" But I can't. And so it does require the clarity of what's that desire that I really want to step into, but then overcoming all of those obstacles that show up when we're in the middle of considering a big risk. So what advice would you have for women that are thinking through taking a big risk?
I mean, for me, it was start small, really one step at a time, one
Mhm.
step forward. It's great to have the vision, but then, for me, just grounding myself every day in one step forward, because sometimes it is one step forward, two steps back. Believe me, it felt impossible for me too. I never thought I could leave the security of having the paycheck of the law firm. But it became such, I would say, an imperative for me to do it, because it was clashing with another value I had, which was my
Yeah.
desire to have some family time and to be
Yeah.
able to have freedom. But I get it. I mean, and sometimes in the moment things aren't possible. You've got so many different plates spinning or so many pressures. So things cycle, I think I've found in
Mhm.
life. And so you have to sort of think ahead. Okay, when I do get that breathing space, what will I do? And how will I
Yeah.
do that? But really one step at a time, visioning it first is a good idea. And then thinking about
Yes.
one step.
Well, that's it. It's because if we don't have a vision, then we have nothing to move toward. And creating that vision allows us to figure out what are the small steps that we can take. And a lot of that is research and exploration and having conversations and just learning more about something and then saying, "Oh, I can take this next step or I'm going to explore this piece." And it's amazing what happens when we do that. Things open up. We build relationships. We learn something that's life-changing as it relates to our vision.
Exactly. I agree 100%, Jen. Conversations, research, sometimes your due diligence really is conversations like the one we're
Yeah.
having now. It's like, oh,
Mhm.
okay. I don't know anything about podcasting. I really want to know more about that, or
Yeah.
investing, or whatever that is.
Yeah.
And just finding people who might have done that before you, or getting the feedback,
Mhm.
I think for me also just surrounding yourself not with yes people, but with positive people who are like, okay, that might be hard, but there's a way. There's a way.
Very important who we tell our dreams to because whenever I there are people who are willing to come alongside and help breathe life into your dream and vision, and there are people that it actually triggers them about what they can't do or haven't done or don't are too scared to do. And so that starts to, sort of be toxic for the dream that you're holding. So we
Absolutely.
have to be really mindful and discerning about who we're sharing it with.
Right. And you might not know before you share it how that reaction will come back
True.
at you. So you have
True.
to be prepared for different things. But then, if you don't get the reaction you were hoping for, which I would hope for myself, would always be support and maybe some insight. Then keep keep going. But be mindful of who you're sharing your dreams with. Think about it before you share your dreams. But your dreams are yours. They're legitimate. You should embrace it.
Yeah. So two things come to mind. One is how powerful it would be to go to your trusted people and say, "I'm going to share something with you. This is what I'm looking for in sharing this." Because
So
then
powerful.
you set that person up to, okay, I just need you to listen because I haven't said this to anybody out loud before. I just need you to be supportive of this is something that's inside of me that's growing.
Absolutely. If you find
And
a good listener and just reflecting that back to you, like,
yeah,
okay, that's legitimately your dream.
yeah, yeah. Or, maybe the need is, I want to share this with you. This feels scary to say out loud. I feel insecure about even disclosing this dream that's inside of me. I'm looking for a next step. Could you help me figure out like what a next step could be? So you're empowering the other person to be able to support you in the right way.
I love that. The way you put
right?
that is just so beautiful. 100%. Yes. Yes. You
The
sh-
other thing is, I find that in coaching sessions, a lot of times people are breathing their dream for the first time because it starts to come out when I'm asking questions. And then they're like, well, there is this thing. So if I ask somebody, what do you really want to be doing? Or what, if you could, if money wasn't an issue and time was an issue, sort of eliminate all those barriers that tend to show up, what would you love to do? And it takes a safe environment for them, but I find that there's something there. There's something inside that they just haven't had the courage to breathe before, like meaning say out loud.
right. Or maybe even let bubble up and articulate to
Yes.
themselves,
See it for the first time, put words to
Exactly.
it. Yeah. So there's this other thing that's part of your life, which is travel, that I'm so curious to hear about because you said that you do house swapping.
Yes, my family and I have been house swapping. I think we've done 44 now. And so we've been to many interesting places. We've swapped with a family in China, which was amazing for a month. We've swapped with Iceland, Italy, places in the US, most recently in Sedona. I mean, it's super fun. We've met incredible people too, Jen. I mean, I think that's part of the joy. We swapped 2 summers ago with a gentleman who'd been restoring his family home in northern Italy for like 20 years. And
Hmm.
then last summer, as he and his sons were on their way somewhere else, they were doing a tour around the US. They came and they stopped for lunch. It was such a joy, because we had met them virtually and then we got to meet them in person.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you get started with the house swapping? Where did that come from?
Yeah. I like a lot of things, serendipity. So a friend, the mom of one of my daughter's schoolmates said, oh, I think you would really love, we had said we wanted to go to England. She was English and her sister was there, wanted to come to the US. She said, oh, I think you guys could, really have fun. You could swap houses and that your houses are similar enough so you'd both be happy. So
Yeah.
that was the start. And that was not through a formal platform or anything. So we did that swap. It was an amazing summer. We spent 4 weeks in Hampstead, England, which is just a glorious place surrounded by parks. It's a little 4-story Victorian house. And then the English family was here and they got the full on, hot California sun and swimming pool and whatever else you find in LA. And so that was the beginning. And then, we started, my husband discovered a couple platforms where you can actually sign up and you put pictures of your house and
Okay.
then like you can say, hey, we really want to go to Thailand this summer. And then things pop up.
That's so cool. I've never done that. I'd love to do it.
It is a blast, I have to say. And meeting the people is so interesting. So it starts with kind of okay, our time frames and our interests in swapping are here. And then once we've kind of established we're interested, we'll have a virtual call to,
Yeah.
see their place fully and to just have a conversation. And I just love that part. I absolutely love it. And, one of the amazing things was we swap with so many people now. And in January, we were very fortunate. We were avoided the wildfires in my neighborhood in LA, but we had so many WhatsApps from people we've swapped with all over the world just saying, are you guys okay? And,
Wow.
how are you doing? And yeah,
Mm. That's
it's,
beautiful. The
mhm,
relationships that are
yeah,
formed through those experiences.
it really is fun. And there are places all over the world. So I strongly encourage you to try it.
What are the platforms you'd recommend?
So we work through home exchange. There is a membership fee, and then you've got to have a place to exchange. There are other sites where some people have second homes, which we don't, and you can always be swapping. But one thing I love about it is that people are homeowners, so they're so respectful.
I would
We've
think
had
so.
incredible experiences. People coming to our place, people, us going to other places, and it's someone's home. So
Yeah.
it's just also fun to step into someone's shoes and experience something very locally through how they're living, you know? We went to
Yes.
Iceland and they have geothermal heating, so it's coming up through the floor
Wow.
of their place. Just experiences like that you would never have here
Wow.
and you would never have staying in a hotel, you know?
Beautiful. I love
Yeah.
it. I love the whole thing, the concept.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, we'll chat offline. I'm going to send you a link and
Okay.
yeah, it's a blast.
So as we wrap up, what would you love to leave the audience with as they're listening with regards to, investing in women and taking risks and all the things that you've learned and are so passionate about?
Start with a single step. Start thinking about
Mhm.
it and, take one step today and think about taking one step tomorrow. Really, it's that simple.
And what's the reward? Why would someone be willing to take the risk?
Yeah. I mean, the promise of freedom, the prospect of financial returns, which isn't guaranteed, and also just the sense of agency. Like, okay, I
Mhm.
felt so good when I invested in the compostable company. I was just so happy. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like, you're creating things in the world that you want to see. You're supporting things that you want to see. And that for me is really incredible.
Yeah, it's I think of a couple of things. It really does make me feel alive when I'm
Yeah,
taking risks, when I'm, living more fully than just staying comfortable or hiding behind
absolutely.
comfort. And
Yep.
also just how meaningful it is. It's so like I talked recently about the cycle of generosity, where we're always giving of what we do have and receiving of what we don't from others. And it's this cycle that happens when we're always giving out of our abundance and then receiving in those places that we don't have, but somebody else has that abundance. And I think about how truly rewarding that is, how meaningful it is when we're living that way. And I mean, people love the reward of giving, right?
So,
It
and
does
again,
something
yeah,
intrinsically inside of us that feels good.
it feels really good. And again, I invest for return. I think giving to nonprofits is amazing, but that sense of just taking a risk kind of for me, it just gives me like a pop of energy. It's
Mhm.
exciting. It's like, oh, I did something. I wasn't sure I could
Yeah.
actually do that.
Making a difference, and I love that we can
Mhm.
start small, and it really does matter to the people that are receiving that investment. Because it is not just the monetary investment, it's the belief.
All of it. All of it. It's the belief,
Somebody
it's the
believes in me.
support, and
Mhm.
it's a creative act, and I love that. It's just
Yes.
it's creative, you know?
It is creative. Yeah, and I could tell that you've lived your life that way, especially in your work, um, and also the way that you've created opportunities for yourself, and even like the house swapping, I think is really creative.
Well, thanks, Jen. I really hope you get to try that. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I want everybody to check out your TEDx talk. It's called "Why We Need More Women Investors," and look up Stephanie Granato. I'll also include the link in the show notes so everybody can find it. But it's really good. Share it with all the women that you know, and let's create a movement. Let's change the landscape together.
Together, we are the movement. So, yes.
Yes, yes, I love that. Thanks for being here, Stephanie.
Jen, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I'm just so thrilled to be able to be here.
Thank you. In the meantime, until the next episode, the lioness in me sees the lioness in you.